Hey, DelCo. This is your DelCo leadership team here, and we're hanging out with Crystal Funk today. And if you were wondering, Crystal is the fearless leader of Hearts United with Haiti. They're one of the organizations that we support, and we're really excited to talk with her today about what's going on in Haiti right now, what she's been doing in Haiti for years and years now, just to kind of give you guys an update of what's going on. So, Crystal, it's good to be with you.
It's good to be here. Thank you.
Yeah. So if you wanted to start, maybe just giving like a brief, your elevator pitch. Hey, this is kind of what Hearts United is.
Okay, no problem. For me personally, I had done missions with an organization in Georgia, stateside for domestic for 7 years prior to going to Haiti. And they had contacted me after the earthquake in 2010 and said, hey, do you want to come down and help run our mission base in town? And so they had groups coming all summer. So I went down with the intent of doing that. That's not where God put me. He ended up putting me in the field instead, as he often does things like that. So he put me into the field, and I instead worked as a support for people who were project leading small short-term mission groups for the entire summer of 2010. And during that time met and befriended a family that we stayed at their house and got to know them really well. And they had a remote school, and they were starting a school, and they had a church way out in like nowhere land. And so we had to machete our way in and all that kind of stuff. So he asked me to come on board and help him with that. And that's honestly, that was the intent. At the time I was working at a school in education. So education was my thing and very much where my heart was. And so I think that was the carrot that God kind of dangled. And because a year and a half after starting working with him, we ended up not continuing our partnership with him and moved in a different direction. But Hearts United was born out of that. And because of our work stateside and the fact that we had done so much, I had done so much stateside and talked to so many people and stuff, mostly inner city Denver, inner city Philadelphia, New Orleans, 12 trips after Hurricane Katrina, to the Gulf Coast, that kind of stuff. I really was very much into relational ministry and just building relationship and getting to know people before, no touch and go, just swoop in, do something, leave. That's just not where my heart's been. So that's kind of how we have it based at this point and it continues to be like that. And people appreciate that. We have some great friends down there. So yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that's, we got connected with you guys through Haley, who came down for a trip.
Right.
6 years ago now?
Oh, something like that. Yeah, that's right. 6.5 years ago. Maybe 6, almost right on the dot.
I was going to say it was May. Yeah.
Yeah, it was probably like close to right on the dot 6 years ago.
And Crystal, I don't know if you know this, but you and Hearts United are one of the reasons Haley and I are married. Because when she went down there, it was the first time I hadn't had contact with her for like a week and a half. And I was like my heart just knew. I was like, I can't not talk to this girl for 10 days again for the rest of my life.
Aw, that's really cool.
Yeah, when she got back and called me, I think she was at the Miami airport. She called me and I was doing laundry, actually in inner city Philly in Kensington.
Okay, that's where we did ministry.
Oh, you were in Kensington?
Yeah, I was there a lot.
Yeah, wow. Do you know where that little Phoenix Park is?
Uh-huh.
Right in the middle. We live 2 or 3 streets away from there.
No way.
Yeah, up on
We're at the corner of Coral and Cumberland.
But anyway. Yeah. Look at that. So I was doing laundry down there, and Haley called me, and when I heard her voice, I was like, "That's it.
This is it. Gotta do it."
He was done.
Yeah, it was the plan. I normally let people talk to anybody they want when they're down there, but she said, for the next 10 days, can you just cut? No, just kidding.
And you'll also notice that since he's been married, she's never come back to Haiti. And it's because Brad's mad that she went there in the first place.
No, we actually have been wanting to come down for a long time now. So we'll get down there soon. That'd
be awesome.
Come down. Maybe with a group of DelCo people.
No doubt.
That'd be really awesome.
Yeah, that would be a lot of fun. Haley has questions written
Oh,
down.
look at her.
Yeah, good job, Haley. Yeah, so tell us a little bit more about like how Hearts United started and kind of the first few years of ministry, and what it's kind of morphed into and where you guys are at.
Absolutely. Okay, so if you look back at the history, there's people who have supported us from the beginning who are like, you guys keep changing gears, moving different directions, and we have, but that's been totally God's direction and God doing that, as I said before, as he often does. So yeah, we initially started just to help that pastor and his family to raise funds, because we knew that I could be able to do that in the States. And then I could be able to help him by sending the funds down, and I talked to their community about the importance of education because I was in education and things like that. And then about, like I said, about a year and a half after we were going down there, there were some things that came up that we just philosophically decided it was not a good fit any longer for our organization. Although in the meantime, we had been able to be used by God to put in a clean water system, a water treatment system out there. We were able to build latrines for members of the community and the church. We built like a 4-stall latrine at the church. And we were able to be used to do things like that through short-term groups and through hiring locals. We do believe 100% in, if at all possible, I mean, there's like an 80-some% unemployment rate in Haiti. So if at all possible, not bringing foreigners down to do work that Haitians are able to do and perfectly capable. And that's been a switch, not a switch in the organization, but as far as how I do my Malone groups now, they need to do some kind of education now with the community. And so everybody who comes, if you bring a group down, everybody who comes, they need to do something that will be useful for educating so that when they leave, it continues on and blesses others. And it's not just a week and they did something and then they left. So anyway, so we changed that way. We started working with an orphanage because we were heading back and forth to this remote location, but people would stay in the city coming from the airport and going to. So we started partnering with an orphanage right down the street. And again, it didn't take us long to realize there was some stuff going on there that was not cool.
Yeah.
So ourselves, we found out about other organizations that were in there. And there ended up being 9 organizations that got together, and we basically, reported them to Haitian Social Services. It actually made it to international news. It was on the Associated Press. It was on international news, and we're able to help get that orphanage shut down. So when it shut, they moved the girls to one orphanage in Port-au-Prince and the boys to another in our town in Carrefour. So I was close with some of the girls. So my daughter and I came down and helped transition them to the orphanage. Now, I've always been not a fan of orphan ministry. And so I'm like, God, you got me in orphan ministry now. So we did partner with that orphanage, help them transition, help them try to become as independent as possible, put a water treatment system in there as well through the same organization that partnered with us, did some stuff. And that was going well. We put a nanny program in up there. I'm sure, Haley, you went up to the orphanage, didn't you? Yeah. And, it was going really well. The pastor was an amazing man. He really cared about the kids and really wanted to help them. And he wanted to be as independent as possible and not reliant on foreign aid. So, but then in 2016, he passed away and his kids took over, and they don't share that philosophy. They claimed that they were trying to keep his legacy going, but it was all about gleaning. They would take food that we would deliver and they would keep the best stuff for them. They were stealing funds. So we found out a lot of things that were going on that we just were like, we can't continue. So we had a bunch of people who were supporting the ministry through orphan sponsorship that we had to just notify and say, we can't in good stewardship continue to take your money and take it over there. They're taking, so yeah. We ended that. So then God kind of redirected us. In the meantime, we had opened up just on the side, a small training and discipleship center in our town, because we saw that there were kids on the street that weren't, didn't have anything to do. There's a lot of gang activity not far from us. So we were like, James, actually, one of our guys was like, we should start that. And we did. So once we closed with the orphanage, we've put 100% of our efforts now into working with the training and discipleship center, which has just blossomed. We have 70 kids that come weekly. And it's awesome. We work with them and teach them skills that they'll need to succeed and possibly procure a job with an organization or whatever. So English, computer skills, and eventually hopefully work on driving and things like that that will help them. But while we have them there, then getting to know them and do just exactly what Christ did, walk with them, look for teachable moments, and our staff really pours into them. So that's what we do.
So driving in Haiti is terrifying.
I do drive in Haiti, but I had a really bad accident back a couple years back. So it's yeah, it is terrible. It's crazy.
I have a question, just to follow up. You said 80% unemployment. Is that right now or just in general across the board? It's typically 80%.
That's in general. Right now it's worse because a lot of businesses are closed with the COVID-19 thing, which
wow,
we can
I
chat
can't
about.
even imagine.
It's incredible. And that's the thing. It's so hard because there are so many people who do. And again, I'm not going to bash what somebody else is called to, because if they're called to bring in teams down to do construction or whatever, that's fine. But to watch people do that, we have other mission organizations in Carfu, and I've seen, you know, people who are skilled laborers, who are masons, who are, you know, whatever, able to do the work, welders, whatever. And then there's a group bringing people from the US in, and these people are sitting on the side of the road like, you know, I can't feed my family. I would like to work, and I have no work. So
yeah, it almost makes me think like in Acts when John and Peter are walking towards the temple, and they're walking past, all the Jews are walking past all these people, and they're finally the ones who kind of like look. I picture like the same thing, you know, these mission teams kind of walking past. Anyway, sorry, I just think.
No, it is. It's hard. It's hard to see. And once you're doing relational ministry and you really get talking to people, you hear their heart, and you hear their stories, and you hear how they're like, you know, it doesn't last. A lot of what people come in and do, they're not skilled to do. You bring in like a youth group to come do something that's not skilled to lay flooring, and they're laying tile. And then honestly, you know, 6 months, 8 months later, a year later, it's popping up, it's faulty. It's just, yeah, it's hard. So, and again, not that's, because that definitely has its benefits on the American side for the people who are coming on the trip. I'm not saying that, but for the people they're serving, it's not always, in my opinion, the best.
No, that makes sense.
Yeah, Crystal, as you were talking, I just kind of, I don't know, I just thought about perseverance in ministry. And like you were talking about stewardship and just being open and honest about, like, sometimes stewardship means you pull your resources out of something you have been supporting because you realize, man, this isn't what we thought it was, or it's changed. And like through those setbacks and frustrations, how have you personally like been able to persevere through that? What are some things that have just kept you going through the years?
Honestly, Haiti's a really, really tough place to minister anyway. And so through some of those things, it's been challenging. I've definitely had my times when personally, I've just had to regroup, had to take some time and step back. I've really, really realized in the last 3 years, I'd say, the importance of self-care. Was not doing that, was 100% just going, and not taking time to set aside. So on a real personal note, is one example is I started taking some time before I would head home to go and do something fun for like 3 or 4 days, maybe a week, that I would pay for personally. We didn't use ministry funds, but I would just go and get away, because I found when I was coming home, like you were talking about not talking to Haley for a while, when I was coming home, I would unload on my husband. And then the next time I'm ready to go, he would be, as my protector, as the man who loves me, he would be like, what do you mean you're going back? Like, you just came home and told me all this stuff that was frustrating. I don't want to put you as someone I love in that. So I needed to take some time away, spend some time with God, and just let that go and bring home what I needed to bring home, but let what I needed to let there.
Yeah.
So that's been a huge way of getting through.
Yeah, that's something that we've definitely talked a lot about at DelCo is the importance of self-care. I mean,
it's vital. It's vital.
I mean, even right now we've been going through a series on evangelism, and like the first 2 weeks we talked about, like, if you don't work on your own stuff and confession and drawing close to God, then what are you going to evangelize? You know, what are you going to tell others about this good news that you're not engaging in yourself? So yeah, self-care is everything.
Exactly. And Haiti is because it is so economically depressed and there's so much poverty, it's so easy to get sucked into, I mean, every board meeting we pray about it, and we talk about, we don't want to become a humanitarian organization, but it's so easy to get sucked into that because that's really the need. And Jesus did both. He certainly met physical needs. He didn't just walk around going, God, my Father loves you, blah, 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 and walk away. He did meet physical needs. So there's a time for that, but there's also a time for obviously talking about the Lord and really using those times. So it's finding that balance is tough in Haiti.
Yeah. So when you say humanitarian organization, like you would be more of like when you installed that latrine or the clean water systems, or would you say that those are more the humanitarian things?
Yeah.
And then for you guys, you focus a little more now on the discipling, the teaching, the training, which would be less humanitarian, like meet your physical needs, and more of let's meet your emotional, spiritual, educational needs.
Exactly.
So that you can live life well.
And not only, I mean, when we were doing the latrines and stuff, my husband was great at, he's like, I need to get a Mason who, is Haitian and work with him. And so he did. He had a Mason working alongside him who was Haitian, who my husband learned from. I mean, there's a lot of times he bit his tongue and he's like, that's not how I do it, but let's see how they do it. I want to learn. And so, which Dorville said a million times, he's like, I respected that so much that he didn't come in as the, foreigner who knew everything and was going to just be like, you're not doing it right. So yeah, but you're right. So even then there was still an element of discipleship, an element of walking through life together, and they got talking together, although there's also the language difference. So that's a whole nother, trying to talk through a translator when you're laying block.
Yeah.
And trying to talk about the Lord is it can be challenging. So
yeah. Here's Randy.
Hi.
Andy.
Hey, you're right. Denim and a green shirt.
Exactly how she was described. I've got a question I think might not be on the sheet. Is that okay? I just want to hear when we have conversations like this, I'm a guy who thinks in images. Could you just help walk me through, like, what's a day in the life for Hearts United for Haiti? Like for you, just for a week schedule or a daily schedule, like or maybe it's too crazy or erratic, I don't know, but I'd love to just picture with you, like what it's like for you every day, what your routines are and things like that.
Okay. And when we were talking about how things have changed, my role now has become, when I first started going, I was 100% like, Ron and I are moving to Haiti. Yeah. We're going to live there, da-da-da. And then the more we started doing it, we're like, that doesn't line up with our ministry philosophy at all. Right. We need to empower the Haitians there. So there's two different. I would say my role has become more and more and more this. It's become, cold calling churches, talking to people about what we're doing, putting stuff on Facebook, all the social media stuff, keeping up with donors, contacting people, all that kind of logistical stuff. I also do staff development when I go. So like we have our guys, they're doing Excel spreadsheets now for all of our finances. And so I've taught them how to do that. I've taught them, a bunch of different stuff that we've worked on with staff development when I go. Every March and every September, October, we try to do a couple days we go away and we just work on praying over the ministry with our staff in Haiti and all that. So, So that's for me. For our Haitian staff, it completely varies by the day. For Johnny, who's our in-country director.
Okay.
He can be going into Port-au-Prince and paying the taxes because it's not like here. You can't do anything online. You have to go into the main office, wait in a line all day. So he might be going in and doing that. He might be buying medicine for a little girl up on the mountain where Haley was that has seizures, and we buy anti-seizure medicine for her. He might be, this week he had to run to go get medicine because one of our guard dogs got a cut and it's getting infected. So we had to go buy that.
Wow.
He's touching and keeping in touch with our ministry partners on the ground, our families. David, our center director, is up on the mountain walking through, talking to families. Yeah. So it completely depends on who's involved and,
So I picture you guys being kind of like the emotional, like spiritual center of, what was the town? I'm sorry.
Carfu.
Of Carfu, like, your like area that you're responsible for and what you're ministering to, and like we're gonna nail that. Like we're just gonna do that really well.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly it. And
really
we've been in the same. Haley, you were in the one house. We had another house after that. Now we have our third location, but we're all within like 2 blocks of each other. So we've been in the same community for 7 years.
Wow.
So we really have a presence there, and people know. I mean, people see our groups on the street, people see me on the street, people see our staff. They know who we are, what we stand for, which is huge, because we don't have people come into our gate asking us for handouts, because they know that's not what we're about. But we'll give you a job.
Yeah.
You know, I'll find something for you to do. If you're really down and out, come and talk to us. I have that pile of something that needs to be moved and whatever, go do it. And, you know, and they feel better about it because they've earned it.
Right. There's always a pile of something somewhere.
There's always something to do. So we'll find stuff.
Yeah.
That's really helpful for me. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Tell us a little more about Johnny. How did he get involved with the program? How did he get to be the director? I want to hear that story.
Okay. We hired him straight out as director. It was Reggie, who Haley worked with when she was down. She was actually on the mountain with him when she had some tough times up there. But Reggie was pretty much, he helped us start the organization, helped us get moving, helped us grow. And he got married, and his wife had a green card to come to the United States. So he knew he would be moving to the United States within a year. So he gave us a year's notice, and literally God waited until the week before he left to finally fill the position with Johnny. That was another growing time, man. I was like, all right, it's coming down to the wire. And Reggie's going, I told you in March that I was leaving the next March. And I'm like, I know, but we haven't found it. I mean, it's not like you can run an ad.
Yeah,
There's
you're going to go to Craigslist or something.
Yeah, no, you can't, you know, you talk to other organizations. If they have somebody that's really good, they're keeping them.
Yeah.
So unless they're leaving country or doing something that they're getting rid of staff, it's really, really hard. So I called a pastor friend of mine and said, do you have anybody in your church that you could recommend? And he recommended Johnny. Well, Johnny shows up for the interview, and coincidentally enough, which I don't believe in, it was totally orchestrated by God, James, who was helping me, James was our number 2 guy below Reggie. James and Reggie and I were in the interview. James had worked with Johnny when he worked with another organization like 6 months before.
Okay.
And he's like, I know this guy. And then he starts telling me how we were out on the field one day, and Johnny just like outright just started preaching to this whole community. Like he just got on a roll and was going. And he's like, he has such a heart for evangelism. And I'm like, really? That's so, yeah, God
There's a ton of fire above his head, and there's a whirling wind.
You should hear that man pray. You should hear him pray. It is something I've never seen or experienced. I mean, he's an amazing, amazing man. He's married. He has 2 kids. He's a deacon in his church. He's just a great guy. And we are so blessed. He has his biggest problem in the beginning, and he's finally getting better. He's been with us 3 years. It was in March, is trusting himself. Because again, he worked for another organization for 9 years before us, had left there because of integrity issues, is all he told me. I don't know. He found out something in the organization, didn't feel comfortable there anymore, and left. But he wouldn't badmouth them. He's never told me. He just said he couldn't work for them. And he went, I think it was 4 or 5 months, he had no employment until he interviewed with us. And, but he is such a servant, such an amazing, amazing man. And he has incredible integrity, just super trust. I mean, he does everything. He handles all of our finances. He handles he handles everything and does it with excellence.
Cool.
So, yeah.
Man, that's awesome.
Yeah. Reggie did not end up leaving until June, so that he did have a couple months to train Johnny, which was really good too. So they really worked well together, and they still stay in touch.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, so how often are you able to make it down to Haiti? Is that something you're still down there? Obviously right now with everything,
right.
You know, it's kind of crazy, but is that something you're still able to get down there every year?
Yeah. I'm still going. I'm going about 3 or 4 times a year. Normally I go whenever there's a group from the US, because that's one thing that the guys are still having a little bit of trouble with, is just the cultural differences and understanding the needs of Americans versus, you know, Haitians. And that's very different. So you'll have a group from the US that comes in, and, you know, I know, like I can read someone much easier than they can, and know that, no, they're not okay. Something's going on or whatever. So I go whenever there's a group, just to be that liaison person. Unfortunately, we haven't had many groups since July of 2018 is when a lot of the protesting and craziness kind of started, and it's continued through. So we had like 1 group in 2018 in the summer, and then 1 in July of 2019. and one in the Malone group this past winter, but we've not had many groups. So I go down for them, or I go down for the staff development, and that's pretty much it.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So you usually go down for a few weeks at a time?
I do, because all my flights have always been paid for by a good friend of mine for the entire 10 years. She has paid for every flight. It's incredible.
Is it Haley?
I know. Well, her husband owns his own business, and he flies a lot, so he has a lot of miles. So he gives me a lot of his miles, but I just contact him and I say, Mike, I want to go between here and here, and I give him a range. And like a week later, I'll get an email, or a couple days later, I'll get an email like, your flight's booked.
Cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So they've been really good, and I've tried to stay. So I try to stay as cognizant of the fact that once I'm down there, let's maximize. They paid for the ticket. Let's use as much time rather than fly more.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Man, that's so cool. Anderson, do you have any thoughts or questions or feelings?
I have a question. Unless you guys, I want to hear Haley's questions too, though.
Go, Steven.
One thing I wrestle with in terms of like personally, the idea of partnering with international ministries is like, how can I feel like I'm partnering more than just like a line on a budget item? We see money going out, and I know you've been working with this, and I'm just curious, disciple me in a sense, like how can I be more like fully partner with ministries like you or other ministries across the world, where there's so much distance. And I think it's even beautiful now, like I get to see you face to face, and that's something that we didn't have opportunity for even like a decade or so ago. But I don't know I was just curious, with you working in this area and connecting with people stateside, what does it look like for us to truly partner with ministries like you guys?
That's a great question. I would say, in all honesty, and this is speaking across the board for, like you said, for anybody, is the American church especially missions has changed so much over the years to where it never used to be. It was like you sent a missionary and you trusted that they were doing God's work, and they would give you reports and it was done. And then it started to turn into short-term missions, which has an amazing benefit. I love short-term teams. I really do. That's how I started. That's how many people start.
Yeah.
So I think there's a place for short-term missions, but I think short-term missions has evolved to be about the people going and not the people being served. And so in all honesty, I would say the thing that came to mind as soon as you asked that would be that the American church not micromanage what the missionary is doing on the ground, and trust that they know the culture, they know what's going on, and God has called them there.
Yeah.
He hasn't necessarily called you there. He calls people to, in many ways, there's people who, the different gifts. There's the gift of helps, which is what the church, I believe, is they're helping financially so that the person can do what God's called them to do. And so often we get churches that micromanage and want to know, every little nitty, or on the other side, want to say, why don't you go do this with your money? Why don't you go do that with the funds? And I think Johnny should be out doing this. And it's like, but that doesn't work right. So we try to put our American mind into another culture, and that just doesn't. So does that answer what you're?
Yeah, for sure. I think that makes a ton of sense. And I think, like, even what I hear you saying too, I think it's important for me as an individual, I think, to try to regularly connect with those stories on the ground of what you guys are doing. And just celebrating that, honestly, like the Holy Spirit's at work there. And I appreciate that.
It sounds like there's a lot of trust. You have to really have faith in the people that you're financially supporting or otherwise, especially to write not a literal blank check, but to really be like, we believe in what you're doing. Yeah. I'm also hearing you say is that the money that we're giving you for that yacht isn't very helpful. That we write yacht in the memo line every time. Is it not going to buy a yacht, or is that not good?
You guys can come down. We'll cruise you around. No, but seriously, and I think on the flip side of that is we have, as missionaries, have a responsibility, like we talked about, stewardship and accountability. and to be accountable and be sending you guys those stories and those things from the field. So you do know that it is legit and there are things going on.
Sure.
So I think it goes both ways, but it's just when people start to, for example, I know maybe one of your questions, I think, because Haley had sent it to me before, was one of the things of how I've seen God at work. And we had a falling out with a church back quite a few years ago. And that was one of my biggest God moments, I think, in the ministry, but it also was, and it was about finances. They were giving funds every month. And this is hard to explain overall, but you have different accounts and there's a designated account. So if money's designated, if you designate it for something, it has to go for that legally. And so it does. And so, but they were sending funds and they were saying, use it for the orphanage for extra. I'm like, okay. So it was $32 a month to sponsor a child. Some people were giving $50 a month and they would say, take the other $18 and use it for extra. So we had this extra fund. And so this church wanted me to give them a detailed list of what their money had done. And I was like, I can give you a detailed list of what the extra money, because sometimes when groups came down, they had funds at the end of the group. And I would always sit down, I don't know if you remember that, Haley, but I would always sit down with the group and say, okay, we have this much, we use this much of the budget, we have this much left. You guys decide where you want to put that. Did you meet someone this week you really want us to work, whatever. And anyway, so a lot of them would say, just use it for the orphanage for whatever they need. So we had all this general fund that was for general needs at the orphanage, but I couldn't say your money did this. Just like if you send money into Compassion, you send money in, they overall, yeah, your kid's taken care of, they're sponsored, they're whatever, but you can't say, when you buy a big line item or whatever, that it was so-and-so's money that did it.
Right.
So anyway, so that was, so that and a couple other things they ended up pulling out. The way it was that my God moment was that it was really cool because they ended up starting their own, they also were feeling led to start their own organization in Haiti. And so they did that and they contacted their congregants in their church and said, if you'd like to continue with Hearts United, go for it. If not, we're going to start working with an orphanage and sponsoring children. And so 22 people at their church were sponsoring kids, and they all were like, okay, all but one, all switched over to the churches, which made perfect sense. I understood that. And I wasn't angry. I wasn't frustrated. It was what it was. It was God. But I'm going into the new year with it was going to stop at the end of the year. And I'm like, I'm going into the new year. Like, we have 22 kids how are we going to make budget? We're no longer going to be getting all the $32 a month for 22 kids. And or 21 of them. So anyway, long story short, we had a guy at the end of the year who contacted us and just said, hey, I just want to talk to you about what your greatest needs are. Can you call me? I called him from Haiti. There was a Malone group there at the time. It was a Malone and a York group. They were combined. And I called him and said, I'm calling from Haiti. We can't talk long. And he's like, okay, what's your greatest need right now? And I told him about this. And he said, I got it covered. I'll sponsor all of them for the next year. And that'll give you time to find new sponsors for all.
Wow.
I walked out on the porch and I was like, I couldn't even talk. They were all like, are you okay? I'm like, God, it was totally God saying, we want this to continue. And Crystal, it's not about what church does it. It's about, if I want those kids sponsored, they're going to be sponsored. Like, chill out. What are you worrying about? So it was cool.
How cool.
Yeah.
Also, just to respond to kind of what Stephen, your question was about ways you can feel more connected is I think obviously it's a little different because I've been to Haiti and I know Crystal and then I know some of the people who are still working in the organization down there. But to feel connected, to be able to I know Stephen doesn't really do Facebook or Instagram very much, but Crystal does do a really good job at updating and doing live videos. And then I know that it's not Johnny. Who's the David?
David, yeah.
David, when the center opens back up, does a good job at doing little videos of what they're doing with the kids in the center. So you can literally actually see what's going on and what they're doing with the kids and kind of feel more connected in that way. And actually Jordan was saying, actually get a visual of what's going on down there.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
And then I mean, I know Haiti economically and socially has been a mess for a long time, but what has COVID done to everything?
I mean, there was a big talk for a while initially when things started happening here and really ramping up here, that they were going to do what they called herd immunity. So they were just going to let everybody just go ahead and get it and just say, you know, there's only like 60 some ventilators, I think, in the country, and they're not even sure how many of them work. So, I mean, for millions and millions of people. So the chances of anybody, you know, being able to be treated, it's only going to be the wealthy. It's only going to be whatever anyway. So they talked about that, but they got a lot of feedback and flack from that. So they have implemented curfews. They've implemented social distancing rules. We personally provided over 200 masks to our community. They've set up hand washing stations around town. It is illegal to be on the street without a mask on, but they're not really enforcing it well. But just this past week, they were expecting mid-May to the end of May, and May we're right on target, because just this past week we're seeing confirmed cases of about 20 to 30 a day, that it's going up each day. Or end of last week, it was like 76 people announced at 219 as of yesterday. So it's going up, you know, pretty quickly, but that's confirmed cases. It's like here, testing is not readily available. And there's also a stigma. It's kind of a Haiti thing. Haiti's big on vigilante justice because there is no real good justice system. And so they do the same with medical stuff. If they find out someone's HIV positive, the community will, I hate to say it, but the community will react. Let's put it that way. And you can guess where that goes. But so people are afraid to admit that they have symptoms or that they may be positive because they're afraid they'll get stoned or they'll get, you know, something will happen to them, which is a legitimate concern because that has been happening. So yeah. I mean, there was a guy, when it first came out, there was a guy who flew to Haiti from the US. He got there, he started feeling sick. He's a college professor in the north in Cap-Haitian, and started feeling sick. And so he got tested. They had him quarantined. They came to where he was quarantined to tell him he was okay. He left the building. And when he left the building and got in a car, people on the street saw that he was on the street, and people knew who he was and all that kind of stuff. They swarmed the car, pulled him out and beat him. And, you know, so he ended up passing away from the beating rather than, you know, and he was negative.
Wow.
So, but they didn't know that. So yeah, so it's tough. So.
And with everything with the center, you guys are shut down with everything right now.
The government shut us down as of March. I was supposed to fly in on March 19th. I postponed my trip on the 17th, and they closed the country on the 20th. So I would have been, although now they just announced today, the U.S. Embassy announced that they're going to, because the cases are mounting, the missionaries who've stayed are going to have a chance on Thursday to get out. They're going to have a plane come. It's a Spirit Airlines. You have to buy your own ticket, but the U.S. Embassy is allowing them to come in empty and fly out anybody who wants to get out quick. So that's good, that people are able to leave, because I mean, really if you get it, there's really not any resources. So, but for the Haitians, it's pretty grim. So I know, it breaks my heart. It's really, I'm on the phone with the guys. There's a lot of people who claim it's not real. The president is saying that there's cases because he wants to get funding from international. I'm like, if the president was doing that, he'd inflate the numbers a lot more than 200 and some. Yeah. Like, he's not just trying to get money. It's real.
5,000 a day.
Yeah, that's what, so I'm like, they just not, you know, yeah. So they'd say all the time, well, but we don't see anything. I'm like, you're not going to see anything. So it's a lot of education from this end to our staff, who is then hopefully educating others, and practicing social distancing, and practicing staying at home, stay at home, shelter in place, or shelter at home, whatever things. So they're trying to stay home, but they're trying to still work. Yeah, it's a balance.
Yeah. And then just to be cognizant of your time, because I told you it'd be like 30 to 45 minutes. Is there anything left that you'd just really like to share, that you'd really like us to know and our church to know, that's just on your heart right now?
That's huge. I mean, first of all, I definitely want to thank you guys. Cause like, seriously, how about when I contacted you, I was like, I had no clue. The first check came and like, our secretary's like, who is this? I'm like, I don't know. Cause a lot of times people will message me and say, hey, I'm going to be sending in, like I got one yesterday that there was a church in Pittsburgh that's like, hey, we're going to be sending in some funds. I'm like, okay, thank you for letting me know it's coming. She had no idea. She's like, I looked him up online. I don't know who this is. Do you have a connection there? And I'm like, well, the only person I can possibly think of is Haley lives in that general area. So I contacted you. But you know, it just was such a blessing. It always is such a blessing when God brings people up that we don't really have. I mean, we have the connection through Haley, but we don't have a personal, that is just such an encouragement. So seriously, I want to thank you guys incredibly for that and the blessing that was just to get that first check alone. And then, well, when it happened the second time was when she was like, wait, do you need it? That's when I contacted you. Cause I'm like, maybe this is going to be something that I don't know. So yeah, huge blessing. And I mean, giving is definitely down right now because of the situation in the world. And I understand there's a lot of unemployed people. We've had a lot of our monthly sponsors either suspend or cancel their monthly sponsorships, which I understand 100%. But then God just brings these people along, and he continues to do that and continues to just, you know, rise people up, others who are able. So like you guys and what you're doing. So I seriously, I really thank you. And I do hope that you guys consider bringing group down, because it's one thing to hear about it. It's another thing, like you said, to see me and talk to me a little bit, but it's a completely different experience when people from your own church that you know and trust come down, see it and say, oh, wow, I was there. I saw the kids. I got to talk to them. I got to whatever. So when things calm down, it would be nice to have a group come.
Yeah, well, we would absolutely love to bring a group down. We're still, excuse me, still a young church. We've been meeting for not even a year now. But it would be great to come on down. We really appreciate what you are doing, and I really need water. Yeah, we're super thankful. We're super thankful for this time together, to get to know you a little more. Obviously, Haley knows you and your ministry really well, and I've been blessed. Haley and I'll, wake up in the morning, be sitting in the bed, and suddenly I'll hear your voice coming through, and she's listening to one of your updates. Yeah, we really appreciate it.
Thank you.
So, yeah, I don't know, Andersons, McCain's, do you guys have any other thoughts, questions, smart remarks?
What are like 2 to 3 ways you can be praying for you real quick? You and your ministry.
I would say for me personally, it's right now continuing to be able to have the time to keep those updates going. My daughter is considered essential here in North Carolina, where she's back, or she continued to work, but the daycares and things like that are not open. Plus she's not comfortable. So I'm watching my granddaughter. I watched her from 5 o'clock this morning till he literally was walking out the door when I got on with you guys. So picking her up. So it's hard with a 3-year-old trying to balance all of that and do live videos and do stuff when she's quick napping or so yeah, for me personally, I would say that, getting that balance and continuing to keep people informed, and for the guys down there, obviously for safety and just for discernment on how God wants to use us, because we're there, we have a presence, he's put us here, and I don't think that's by coincidence, and we've got an established presence in that community. So how do we use that and minister to these people so that they know and are encouraged that they're not forgotten, that God does love them and care about them. So on the other side of this, when this is over and passes, we have, an even better relationship with them and testimony to be able to share with them. So, yeah. So I would say discernment is always, a hard thing to, I definitely take very, very, very seriously, as you've heard, the stewardship issue. It's a big thing on my heart and always has been, because Ron and I never had much. We still don't. This is something I can do. I can physically go, but to be able to financially do it, we never had much. And so I know what it's like to give. And every little bit that somebody gives is taken very seriously. So Yeah.
Well, it sounds like your whole story is you giving what you can give, and then God opening all the doors to make it possible.
Exactly.
I mean, that's incredible.
Exactly. As he does with anybody who's willing to just give him that leeway and just let it go. And yeah.
Totally. Wow. Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah. So thank you very much.
Yeah. Well, Crystal, I'm going to stop the recording. Stay on the line. We want to say bye, but yeah, we're just super thankful. DelCo is super thankful to hear from you. So yeah, you're just great, and we're continually praying for you.
Thank you. Much appreciated.